Before we get into the podcast today, I want to thank today's sponsors. First of which is the gallery. This year we're all looking for that perfect holiday gift, and today I want to tell you about the gallery. The gallery shop is a curated collection of photographs from around the world. All prints are made from 100% recycled aluminum, giving your wall that gallery finish. Right now for the holiday season, the gallery is exclusively offering our listeners 25% off your next purchase using the code Inebri-art. That's 25% off your next purchase at thegallery.com. That's the GALRY using the code Inebri-art, the gallery to create your perfect space. Second of all, our returning sponsor is the Pretentious Pickle. Hannah, do you know about the Pretentious Pickle?
Yes.
You didn't know I was going to bring you. Did I?
No,
surprise you? Okay, so the Pretentious Pickle is a local shop down here on Water Street in Plymouth. They are located at 190 Water Street. And Hannah, you're just telling us that your sister's a huge fan.
She loves the Pretentious Pickle.
Yeah.
She's a big fan.
Nice.
I don't want to say number one, but she's up there.
Well, it's hard to be the number one fan. Like, they're super popular. They do like a weekly giveaway on their Facebook page.
Yeah.
And they get like thousands of people entering it. So if you're a fan of pickles, and it's not just cucumbers, it's all pickled vegetables and assorted local things, bakery items, farm to table type stuff, make sure you check out their website, thepretentiouspickle.com. And you can find them at 190 Water Street, Plymouth, Mass. And tell Lorraine we sent you. Welcome back, Inebri-ites. This is Andy, the Inebri-art podcast, once again. And today I am joined by Sonia from the band Doe Paoro. Did I get that right?
Paoro.
Paoro. I'm horrible with pronunciation, so I apologize. But welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, I feel like every person I talk with, there's like a Corona update. So, like, how are you doing? Where are you at? What's the situation there? And
oh man, I'm doing okay. I think I would say that I'm in greater acceptance of the situation than a lot of people I know in my same position as a musician, because obviously music's been completely shut down, definitely into 2021.
Yeah.
As far as touring goes, and it's a really weird time for us, but I don't really know what else to do but accept it. Can't really fight it.
What were you doing prior to? Because we've talked to a lot of people who, some people who had like albums that were just coming out, people who were just starting tours. Where were you kind of in that whole phase?
Yeah, I feel really fortunate in that I wasn't in either of those phases. For me, like, performing and playing shows is constant. I also do, aside from just my regular concerts, I do sound healing events where I bring a bunch of different instruments that are a little bit more alternative, I guess, to mainstream, like singing bowls and gongs and percussion. And I do those pretty regularly, like all around.
Okay.
When I'm not on an album cycle. So those require in-person. They are musical performances of a sense. But that was kind of where I was mostly going in that direction.
Yeah. How did you get involved in that sort of thing?
I have always been interested in music as a like healing path.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a family that's involved in healing, and it's just where my heart has been in it. And I, at the same time, I've been a songwriter. I've also have like my yoga certification. I've traveled and studied a lot in India. I've been fortunate to do that, and I've been searching over my years to try to understand how to combine the two.
Yeah.
And I started hearing about these things called sound baths. Have you heard about this?
Sound bots, like BOTS?
Sound bath, like a bathtub.
Oh, bath. Okay.
sound robots. No, sound baths. Yeah, have you heard about that?
No.
There are these sort of events with everybody just lies down and you play instruments and play healing music for. Sorry, that's some sort of thing going outside my window. Let me close the door for a second. Should be a little quieter.
Yeah, the Zoom interview is always interesting. I had an actor on just the other day who started freaking out because a coyote walked across her back porch. So it's like you just
You
never know
never
what's
know.
going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, so these sound baths, they're like people like lie down on the floor on yoga mats and you play instruments and it's kind of very meditative and transportive. And that I've been doing those very regularly for the last year and a half when I'm not touring.
It's interesting. I'd never heard of anything quite like this until fairly recently. Back in, I think it was January, I interviewed a harp player, and she was doing like music therapy, where she would go into like, elderly communities and stuff, and kind of like sit next to their bed and play music for them. And
Beautiful.
so,
Yeah, I did that once with like hospice care workers,
mhm.
which was really cool, like as a way to, because they're holding space for so much. It's very easy for them to get like emotionally exhausted, and music is such an amazing way to kind of recharge your soul a bit.
Yeah.
So that was pretty moving.
Do you find that people are reaching out to you for that sort of thing via Zoom, or because I mean, I feel like I am constantly emotionally on edge nowadays with COVID and work and constant barrage of nonsense. And so, do you have people like reaching out even though you can't do it in person for that kind of thing?
Yeah, I've been doing like some private Zooms with
Yeah.
one-on-one, and then I've done a few like bigger things where I'll host a sound bath on Zoom. I think I'm sure somebody's working on it right now because Zoom is just like not the most amazing technology for music.
No, not at all.
It's meant for conferences, so it's
Yeah.
like the sound quality is a little strange, but yeah, I mean that's like $1 million idea right there. Somebody I'm sure is working on trying to get good live streaming
And you're only ever going to be as good as the other person's output.
and that part too.
Yeah.
Totally.
So how do you try to incorporate this kind of music healing into your regular music and your performances?
It's happening quite organically, just because I've been doing it so much, so it's like affecting me.
Hmm.
Um, I think one thing for sure is that the way I would say I hold space in a performance is now very much influenced by kind of how I'm holding space in these healing circles. So my performances have gone from being, more traditional, just like rock, soul music, whatever, I don't know, whatever genre people are projecting on me, but performances to kind of being a container for some sort of like more meditative experience.
Now you said holding space. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think holding space is kind of this term, and it's hard to define, which I would say is like anytime you listen to a friend really intently, right? You're kind of
Yeah.
holding space for them to have their own experience.
Hmm.
Like it's like a different type of listening. I would say it's like 3D listening in the sense that you're not just listening, but you're also somehow navigating an area.
Okay.
So like I would say I'm holding space in for other people to do listening or healing work when I'm kind of facilitating one of these workshops in a room.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to completely define.
And you find that same kind of thing, that same activity when you're performing in concert?
Now I am, yeah, I'm finding ways to, whether it's in what I'm saying in between the songs or just my own presence, I'm finding ways to invoke more of like a healing container or environment when this music is happening. Something that is just a little bit more alternative to your normal show, I guess.
Yeah. When you were, I mean, I'm not sure when you got started in music, but when you got started or prior to your start, when you went to other shows and concerts, did you feel that did you feel them holding the space, or were you holding your own space? I'm not sure how that works, but
Yeah, it's interesting.
did you get that same kind of reaction from the other people that you were watching?
No, a lot of times I don't. Some I do. Like I would say there are some artists who do that really well. Um, who am I thinking of right now? Like My Brightest Diamond, she's an artist in Detroit who I actually opened for a few years ago, and I think she does that really well. There are certain moments in her set where you feel like you're in a church with her or
Hmm.
something. It's very emotional. I look around and I'll see people are having their own emotional experiences of it. Um, yeah, I think it's really dependent on the artist.
It it sounds like, and again, this is just my interpretation, but it sounds like it
Yeah.
could be is it like emotionally exhaustive, like to kind of get in touch with that many people all at once, or does it recharge you, or?
I think I'm inspired. I think I'm exhausted when that doesn't happen because I'm like, what is the point of music, right? Like, I don't know. There's so many different answers to that question, but for me, one of them is getting really in touch. Like you hear something and you feel a little bit less lonely. You're like, okay, somebody else has gone through this,
Yeah.
and it's okay. Like there's this permission in music to feel certain things. Um, and I really like when a live show can offer that up. I feel like that charges me up because it inspires me and feels like I'm achieving what I want to do.
Music is like such a powerful thing when it comes to mood. Like, if I'm in a particularly bad mood, there's like a whole genre of music where I'm like, I can't listen to that right now because it just makes it worse. And I'll actually I'll pick like different people to kind of steer my mood and emotion, so to try and stay kind of mellow headed.
Yeah, it's funny. Somebody asked me that recently, and I guess you just answered it. But like, somebody saying that there's two types of music listeners: the type that when they're in a bad mood, they want to listen to upbeat music, or the type when they're in a bad mood, they want to wallow.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, very
I would
true.
say
Yeah.
so. You're like an upbeat. You're the first one, right?
Yeah, most of the time. I think it's something that I learned because it wasn't always that way. I think I felt that, or discovered that I could change my mood by what I'm listening to. And
Hmm.
so to kind of try to be a better person, I don't know, more mellow headed or something. Because like,
Hmm.
there's nothing more fun than being super pissed off and listening to some really angry music. That's a really, cathartic thing. And you should do it. But then after you have your angry moment, you should definitely, kind of try and steer yourself back into something more positive, I
Hmm.
think.
Yeah, music can do both. It's super interesting that way.
Yeah. I've been finding myself listening to a particular reggae band and it's kind of like a real poppy band lately, and I think it's just to kind of stay upbeat and relaxed in this time. Is there something that you've been listening to kind of make it through COVID?
Um, I'm really curious which bands you've been listening to.
So the upbeat poppy fun one is Walk Off the Earth,
Okay.
and they're kind of like a YouTube-y kind of, they do a lot of covers and they will kind of make them very, very elaborate videos. And so they're just kind of fun. And the other band is, and I'll plug him because he's a friend of mine, is The Elevators.
Okay.
Uh, are you familiar
Not
with them?
familiar. No, 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 I'm not
Oh,
familiar
okay.
at all.
Because they're very local here, but they're starting to kind of like blow up all over the place. And they're just like a very relaxed reggae, just nice, chill. Like I said, I was listening to it the other day, and someone's like, "Oh, you listen to the Elevators?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, today's a good elevator day," and they're like, "Every day is a good elevator day." And I'm like, yeah, that's right. So,
Definitely.
but
That's
what about you? Have you been listening to?
Um, I have been listening to, yeah, actually I've been listening to, I recently gone back to some like classic Bob Marley. for the
Yeah.
same reason that you
And
shared.
it's really just kind of like you find yourself like, and it's not. I'm not actively listening to it. It's, I know the
No,
songs it's on, and I'll kind of walk around and I'll find myself like humming along to it, and you're like just in a better mood.
that's it. It doesn't require work, and I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
and it only kind of just makes you feel like in that positive vibration. And so yeah, I've definitely been listening to him, which is interesting. Like I used to listen to reggae a lot more when I was a teenager, and then I kind of stopped actively listening to it. But I forgot that like listening in the morning to Bob Marley is like one of my favorite things.
I can totally see that, and I'm a late comer to the reggae train. There's a place right down the street from me, and the owner would work the bar on Sundays, and he'd be like, "It's
Mhm.
every Sunday is Reggae Sunday," and you go in, and it's just this very chill vibe. So
Yeah, it's really positive. And then I've just been listening to other like a lot of. I'm really into these sort of Kundalini yoga singer music that's just very vibey and peaceful.
yeah, what is it?
Kundalini yoga is like
Oh,
a type of yoga, and there's a whole music. I'm gonna move over here. I'm like trying to move to different places in my house where there's less street traffic
awesome.
blaring. Um, but yeah, Kundalini yoga is a yoga tradition, and
Does it
there.
involve baby goats and craft beer?
No. It's like very soothing and sort of angelic singing, and I've been listening to a lot of that. Yeah, I've been less digging for music that I find challenging and more music that I'm finding to be stabilizing and peaceful in this moment.
Have you been writing any new music in this time?
I have, but things are changing so fast, Andy, with like everything happening politically and with the virus, that it's a hard time to write music. Like songs that I wrote a few months ago feel unimportant to me now. So,
It's so funny. I find it just hard to work in general because
mhm.
my focus is gone, and just I'm very on my last nerve all the time. So it's just like even watching a movie now is like to sit for 2 hours and just watch something. I find it very difficult.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that comes up for me when you say that is just also like how dependent we've all become on our phones for news in this time. Like, so that like attention span is shorter as
Yeah.
well. But I relate to that, and I've been hearing that a lot from people of all ages. Like when this first started, when quarantine first hit, it was like, okay, we're gonna do all the projects, we're gonna Marie Kondo our house, we're gonna do everything, and like the reality is, most people I know, including myself, like did not have the energy for that because I think coping with change takes so much energy.
Yeah, and it's not like little bit of change. It's like
Yeah,
the most crazy change ever. And
yeah, it's like you're wearing a mask in public. Change,
yeah. I was
and it's
telling
not
someone,
always.
I was saying to someone earlier today. It's like I before I'd have like my full time job, I'd be running an Inebri-art. I had a part time job, and it was one of those at the end of the week. You're like, I don't know how I got all that done, and now it's like I just can't get the motivation to do laundry. Yeah.
Man, it's so real. I think a lot of people will hear that and relate to it. Um, I relate to it big time. And at the beginning of quarantine, I felt like I was beating myself up a little for it, and then I recognized what it was. It was just like the energy it takes to adapt.
I'm still beating myself up for
Yeah.
it. So when you are writing under normal circumstances, do you start with lyrics or a melody? Like, how do you begin the process?
It changes every time. Definitely for me to finish a song, I need to have lyrics that I'm feeling are like meaningful to me.
Yeah.
So if I start with a melody and I just kind of fill it up with filler lyrics, it won't get finished. But a lot of the time, the best way for me to start is with a lyric.
And you were saying that some of the songs you wrote earlier in quarantine don't kind of ring true anymore. Do you find that you kind of, after a while, stop wanting to play the songs because they lose meaning or aren't quite as topical anymore?
In general, I strive to write things, and it's you can never know if you're achieving this, like that are more timeless. Like
Yeah.
I try to write on topics that I think it's just kind of what inspires me. Um, and yeah, you never know if something's gonna be timeless unless time goes by and you're like,
Right.
yep,
Yeah.
that's still relevant.
Yeah.
So I think I've actually done an okay job at that in some of my music. Some of it hasn't. Some of it hasn't aged, and um, yeah, I think for me personally, it gets more difficult as the years go by to write music because I have all my past experience that I'm working against.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, okay, it has to be like this, and it has to be this way because I know now that those other things are mistakes. Whereas when I first started out, it was like, yeah, this is good enough.
It's funny. I feel like I'm more critical of artwork and drawings that I've done, say, like in the past like year or two. But if you go back further than that, you're kind of like, oh, I kind of like that. Like, I don't know. That's like this certain amount of time frame where you're like, you're very critical, and then after a while, you're kind of like, I was better like 10 years ago than I thought I was, or whatever.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm like, is the criticism really helping me that much? Get back. Remains to be seen.
I don't know if it helps, but I can't get rid of it.
Yeah, I'm working with it.
Yeah, I feel like it's a matter of learning to ignore that critical voice, not really deal with it, just to you know let it shut up.
Yeah. Yep. Take from it what is working. Um, yeah, it's definitely a slower process, and I can't say whether that's just experience or the quarantine slog of not knowing exactly what to say about what's happening because it's still happening.
Right. Oh yeah, and that's the thing is it's that total unknown. Like things, I don't know where you are. We're in Massachusetts, and things are starting to slowly kind of open up. I'm actually going to see a music show tonight. I'm actually kind of excited.
Really?
Yeah. So they have like instead of buying one ticket, you buy a table, and
Oh,
so,
wow.
so then the tables are all 6-8 feet apart, and you're allowed to sit at your table with your mask off. But if you get up to like go to the bathroom or something, you have to put your mask on. But you're not allowed to like get up and mingle and socialize. So it's very like you sit here, and that's all you. That's the only place you go. So I'm curious to see how it works out, but I'm really interested to just get the hell out of the house. I'm very excited. So
I'm sure. No, I'm in Los Angeles, so we're spiking again.
oh yeah, you guys just they shut down restaurants again, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think they were very premature in opening them
Yeah,
uh, because now people have to overcome this second wave of like psychic acceptance
yeah,
that they're going to be shut in again.
hmm yeah,
Where,
and it's
yeah,
it's like being beat down again. You know, you have that glimmer of hope, and then it's taken away. And the people I talk to around here are very apprehensive about that happening again. Like everyone's trying to be super cautious, and so
yeah, I don't see that enough in LA. Like, there's parts that are very cautious, but then it's so regional. Like, there are areas, and I was in Redondo Beach, which is kind of a little bit further outside of LA, closer to the airport, and people are acting like there's no pandemic, like no masks, nothing, just milling about. Like,
wow.
what is going on?
And it's if like because I live I don't know like 3 or 4 blocks from Plymouth Rock and the waterfront. So if, like people walking down there, I'd say who are just kind of like walking, passing by, like right on the ocean. You don't see a lot of masks, but the second you go inside somewhere, almost everybody has masks on.
Yeah, interesting. It's all I know is that it changes depending on where you are. It's very cultural and um, connected to the local, like,
Huh. It's
overall culture.
I think it's also connected to the government politics and
Hmm.
because there's a certain type of person who doesn't wear a hat around here, and they're all wearing red baseball caps. So,
Yep. It's one way to find out, like, what somebody believes.
oh boy, it's interesting. We do, and I said like everyone's really cool, but we still have some just terrible people that are just going above and beyond, making life horrible. A friend of mine had a restaurant that he just threw someone out who wasn't wearing a mask, and 2 days later he got arrested for like coughing and spitting on people. And yeah,
The same person who
Yeah.
he bounced.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, where does this sort of hatred come from? Like, it's such vile behavior, and
I just don't get where it goes from I don't believe I should be wearing a mask to I'm going to cough and spit on you. It's like you wouldn't do that on any day. Like, I don't understand.
America has a selfishness problem. Like, I feel like we have mistaken freedom for selfish, like, or disguise our selfishness for freedom. Like, I need to have, it's my right to dress however I want to, wear a mask if I want to, not wear a mask. And it's like, it's just selfish.
Yeah,
No.
it very much is, especially, the experts saying, you wear the mask to protect others from you, not the other way around. And I'm like, you do it just for the other people's mental well-being. You have the poor clerk at the grocery store.
Like,
just wear a mask.
for their mental well-being. I mean, can you imagine? Like, I'm not an essential worker. Clearly, I've realized that music is not an essential worker position. But I feel so much empathy when I like get my groceries or do anything. And these people all day long must, I don't know what their experience is, but I would be on edge.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Our editor producer Fish that edits the show works in a grocery store, and it was a rough 4 months for him or so, and he's still struggling through it. But it's like, just wear a mask. Be nice to these people. They're still just trying to do their job. They're not trying to make your life worse.
Yeah, the fact that people are adults are holding full on tantrums and.
Did you see the video? Did you see the video of the old lady that just sat down in the middle of the floor?
No.
Oh my God! So like she was at like a Costco or something like that, and they were stopping her at the entrance, and she refused to leave. She refused to put on a mask. So they're like, "Well, we're gonna get the manager or whatever." And she, like a toddler, sat down right in the middle, like right in everyone's way.
Wow.
And
it's really fascinating to me, like the inner child. It's like, just as somebody who's interested in psychology, like the inner child tantrums that are coming out in adults, and what is that?
Yeah, I think that's the most unnerving part. Is like, wow, I would never in my life think to act that way.
Yeah, the behavior. I'm like, how did you make it through life behaving this way?
Yeah, like I can understand being angry and want to talk to the manager, but just be like, well, I'm going to sit on the floor right here. I don't. Yeah.
My friend posted a video the other day. She was in Trader Joe's, and like some woman started like throwing her cart at the workers. I'm just like, what happened that you missed these like critical steps of how to behave?
Yeah, it's unreal. Do you foresee? I mean, obviously there's going to be big changes, but like, when do you think we're going to be getting back to concerts the way we used to have them in the past, or do you think those are just gone for good?
I think when we have a vaccine, that will happen, and until then, there's going to be lots of alternative situations showing up like this, like what you described is the first I've heard of anything like that.
Yeah,
it's really cool. I imagine that somebody right now is at Live Nation, I'm sure, is planning some sort of outdoor thing where people have their like circles in the grass and they can stay in their bubble. Like, I could see things like a lot more outdoor. The outdoor space will probably become a lot more important. Mm-hmm. But I really don't see bands touring in any major way for the rest of the year.
Yeah. And I know a few places tried like the drive-in concert, but I don't know how that went.
The sad thing is, what will happen, at least what I see happening in my limited view, is that smaller bands or bands that are sort of in the middle just won't be able to tour because they're not going to be able to fill up like big amphitheaters or stages. So you're going to get a more homogenous touring experience.
Do you think that because of that, there'll be more call for more smaller, intimate, not even necessarily clubs, because if we're talking like outdoors, but smaller, intimate venues like this, the place where I'm going today is this place called Soundcheck Studios, and it's a rehearsal space for bands that basically ended up putting in stage and lighting system and would run concerts, and this is going to be in their parking lot.
How cool. That's very cool. Yeah, I think that the DIY spaces are going to really spring up.
Yeah.
I can see people hosting like home shows with, 30 friends in their backyard or something like that.
We were going to do something like that too. With,
Yeah.
maybe just 10 people for now and kind of like live stream it. And
Yeah, I know that I was asked recently to do one of these sound baths I was talking about, like at the end of July in Malibu here. And it's a space that I've worked for before. And in the past, I've had like 30 people there,
yeah.
30, sometimes a bit more. And we're capping it at 9.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's, capacity is so much smaller.
Yeah. It's very interesting. We'll see what the shakeout is. I think it's going to lead to some really interesting intimate experiences, though. But just the financial aspect of how you sustain that is going to be the question.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of musicians here, we have a really strong, bar scene. So there's a lot of,
Cool.
cover musicians and whatnot. And luckily, they've been able to apply as gig workers for unemployment, but that's not really a standard thing around here. So, it's going to be tough for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what happens with the CARES Act because right now, at least in California, I don't know if this is across the country, the CARES Act runs out at the end of July.
Yeah.
And that's what, in my mind, has been keeping people from going into full-on desperation mode is that they haven't financially had to flip out yet.
And so I know they're talking about like what to do next about that. And as a receiver of the CARES Act, I've greatly appreciated it. But it does become like this weird double-edged sword where I know business owners who've been trying to reopen and reaching out to their staff being like, hey, we're going to open. And they're like, I'm not coming back. Because they're making more money on unemployment than they were making because of it. And so there's this weird, like, I think if they extend it, they need to figure out some sort of beneficial way to encourage people to return to work so we don't encourage people not to.
It's very tough, especially because I think the risk probably if you're encouraged to go back to work is like, well, what if I go back and I'm making less money and I get sick?
Yep.
And I'm risking that you might not even stay open, and then I'm going to be screwed again and have to figure this out. Like
exactly.
Businesses are flopping right now.
How do you think this is going to affect recording and like a recording studio? Do you think there's going to be more makeshift home recordings or?
Yeah, for sure. I think it could be, it's good. It will be a very fascinating time in music when this all comes out. There'll be a lot of home recording. I think that a lot of inventiveness in general is happening right now, which is one of the cool things about quarantine is people are becoming very creative of how they can work around these issues we're being presented with. Also, maybe because we don't have to tour this music necessarily, there'll be more elaborate productions in some ways because you won't have to figure out how to replicate it live for at least another year.
Yeah.
So those are all things I could see happening. But I don't know what other people are doing if they're going in and out of studios. Like, it doesn't seem that wise to me because you're breathing on microphones and it's indoors, and usually these studios aren't huge spaces, so you can't really afford to be a studio like going into a lot of different spaces, I don't think.
And they're kind of designed to be a bubble. Like they're not meant to have good ventilation, and because that's all more sound. The less sound, the better. So
that's right. There's something that comes with that soundproofing, and it's that petri dish experience.
Is it something that is there? Because I've done lots of trade shows and stuff like that. And there's always you come back for the trade show and you're like, I have 3 days before I'm getting sick. That's just a given. Is
so
there
funny.
is it that kind of thing like when you're recording in a studio where you're like, all right, 4 days after we finish recording, we're all getting sick from the same thing?
Oh, wow, that's so interesting. I never put that together, but I'm sure. I mean, I've gotten sick in a lot of recordings. Now that I'm like looking back after you said that, I'm like, that does add up.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to call it con crud.
That's really funny.
Yeah. And part of it's just that you see so many people at those things where you're just constantly shaking hands and you're like, yeah. I was actually,
I mean,
the strange thing.
We're going to be sick. Oh, sorry. Go on.
The strange thing is when COVID broke, I was actually at a trade show in Las Vegas, and we were all just like, "Oh, we definitely have it. There's no way we didn't get this." So.
Yeah, I mean, we're all going to be so conscious now of the ways that disease is spread. Like, this is going to be some wild stuff for the rest of our life that we're going to be thinking about globally.
Yeah, and I think there will be people that will just wear masks as part of the thing. I don't think, that's going to go away.
Certainly. Well, I remember just as an American who's not super well versed in, so I haven't traveled in Asia so much, when I would see them wearing masks on the plane, I didn't really fully understand. I guess I didn't understand what that was about. And now I'm like, oh my God, that's something that I'm sure we're going to adopt, because it's just a way of being polite and it's hygienic.
Yeah, and that's one of those other petri dishes that it's just like, there's no way you're not breathing everything that everyone has on there.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, it's interesting how fast that changed. Well, because also I saw this video of Naomi Campbell last year. Somebody sent it to me where she's in first class and she's wiping she takes out latex gloves and she's wiping everything down and Purelling everything, full on sanitizing. And I remember people in the comments were like, she's crazy. And now it's like, who's really crazy?
Yeah.
Was she crazy?
Was she?
Are we crazy for going in on this without proper precautions?
And it's such a it's strange double-edged sword, because part of what our immune system needs to function is to be exposed to germs, because it's how it learns to fight off. But it's but you don't want to be exposed to that wrong one the wrong time.
No, yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, our grandparents' generation, my grandma always says to me, Sonia, you need to eat dirt a bit more.
Yeah. My mother was a nurse, and she was just kind of like, don't worry about it. You're fine. Just pick it up and eat it. You're fine.
Yeah. You get exposed to it, right? And that's how you get over it. But
so you haven't been writing a lot of music, which I totally understand. Do you miss it? Are you anxious to write more? Is it, because I feel that my creative process is like a giant boulder, and once I start it rolling, it just kind of takes off on its own. But it's that initial getting it moving. Do you feel like that's going to be an issue, trying to getting back into the swing of things?
I have a lot of trust for my creativity. I know it well at this point that it goes through phases, and sometimes it's happening and sometimes it's not. And I'm not the kind of person who sits at the guitar every day. Yeah. And is like, I'm just going to sit here an hour a day, whether it happens or not. I know there are people who do that. I'm more of the vibe, when my creativity, when that boulder starts coming, I just cancel everything. And then we'll just sort of, I'm like, all right, you're in charge. And I create in a whirl.
So do you have once it takes off, do you kind of put everything else aside and just kind of focus on that, or? Yeah,
generally, if it starts, I kind of go under for a few days, and I'm like, sorry, learning how to say no has been a really amazing practice for me, because I'm just sorry, the muse has arrived. I can't do this thing I said I was going to do. I don't know how long it's going to last. Sometimes it lasts for a day. Sometimes it lasts for a week. It's
it's interesting. It's you talk about it's almost a separate thing. You're like, oh, my creativity. like almost.
I
Like,
know it feels like it because when it does, it doesn't feel like it's me even talk. I'm like, oh, it's some other inspiration that's kind of flowing through me, and that's the way I like to write because I always feel like I believe that stuff a lot more
yeah.
than when I'm pushing. I don't like to put that kind of pressure on my own creativity.
Do you believe that create like where does that creativity come from?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think it comes from the cosmos. I don't know, like not not the planets necessarily, but some
Yeah.
sort of like spirit. Because it doesn't make any sense. Like music, songwriting, if it didn't come from that, it's not a cumulative thing. Like just because I write an amazing song today doesn't mean I'm going to write an amazing one tomorrow. You get better, but you don't. It doesn't get necessarily easier. Like when I'm really inspired, I can write a song in. Sometimes I've written songs in a half hour that are amazing, and other songs take me years. Uh, yeah, the only thing I know is that like when it takes me like a half hour, I'm like that just did not come from me. I don't know where that came from. I channeled it somehow.
Yeah, it's weird how like sometimes, whether it's the planets aligning or whatever, and I've had those drawings where I'm just noodling around just for fun and something comes out and I'm like, wow, that I can't believe I just drew that. And then other times
Yep.
I almost feel like there's something about it's like some of the best songs are very simple songs. And like
Mm-hmm.
the more you start to like produce it and think about it and really just try to manufacture something, it's like part of it is just kind of letting go and it is hard to explain.
It is hard to explain, but you're explaining it well. It's like you kind of drop the strategizing part of your brain.
I wonder because there's kind of that old trope where like bands will be strung out on drugs and they make amazing music and then they clean up and they're terrible. And I wonder if part of that is because they have chemically shut down that part of their brain that is going to make them second guess or kind of like critique their own work where they're just like, this is how it's coming out because I can't do anything else other than just let it come out.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a reason that and there's so many theories why substance dependency hits musicians so hard. And I think one of them is because you start relying on this altered state to give you your creativity.
Which is unfortunate, but
Which is unfortunate. I mean, there's lots of other reasons too, but that's a thing. Yeah, it's the flow state. I mean, the scientific way of talking about it, I guess, is where people have agreed.
Yeah.
The flow state.
And then you start thinking about it and you trip and fall. Yeah.
And you trip and fall. Yeah. The second you're like, oh, I'm in the flow state, it's like, it's over. You just killed it.
You're like, damn it.
The flow state is gone.
I'm just going to start telling people that. I'll be like, hey, you're in a flow state. And they'll be like, ah.
Like Fight Club or something.
Yeah.
Don't tell people you're in it.
First rule of flow state: don't talk about flow state.
It truly is.
Do you have a way to try and get into that state to kind of, to start it off? I guess.
For me, it consistently happens like if I'm traveling.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not an option right now, but I get very inspired by like movement. And the other thing I can do to help with it is to just try new. I notice when I'm trying new things, I'm like, or doing things that make me uncomfortable somehow. I'm opening up. My brain just becomes like that. There's that opening that allows for listening on a greater level, and I find that inspires me. Yeah, if I'm too much in a routine, it doesn't happen.
So you'll almost kind of go out of your way to make yourself uncomfortable?
Yes. Sounds so sadistic.
It does. It's a little bit.
It's a little sadistic, but it's true. It's what helps. It's what helps me.
At what age did you like really get into music where you're like, this is, my profession and this is what I want to do?
I think I knew from a very young age that this was going to be a serious part of my life when I was 15, 16, I can't remember, 15 or 16, I made a record in Syracuse, New York, where I'm from. I just like saved up my money and bought studio time and went in there and played guitar all day, and I gave it out to my friends. And I was not professionally trained. I took guitar lessons, but otherwise I didn't really know much about music, like how to make it. I just knew that I loved it.
Yeah.
And then I went to college. I did not study music, and after I got out of school, it was again like just this calling. So I've pretty much been doing it for my whole working life. It's been
What did you study in
striving
college?
for that. Painting, visual art.
Oh, nice.
So,
Okay. So it's not
yeah.
unrelated.
It's not unrelated, and the more I go into music, the more I realize a lot of musicians have a visual art component too.
Oh, yeah, very much.
Super connected.
We were lucky enough to interview Uli John Roth, one of the founders of the Scorpions.
Oh, cool.
And, started off with the basic, hey, how'd you get into music, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden he goes, I thought this was about art. Aren't we going to talk about art? And I'm like, right on, let's do that. And apparently he was going to either be a professional painter or a professional musician, and he just chose musician. And that guy's legit. Like, he's going on about all these like classical painters, and I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm in art history all over again.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Do you think of visual art while you're writing songs? Is there any connection between the two?
It's a good question. I definitely see it in colors, or hear in colors.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have like a bit of synesthesia in that way, and so I don't think so much of art, but I will hear and think in colors, and yeah. And I have strong opinions on art whenever we're doing anything artistic for the music.
Well, what kind of art do you gravitate towards?
Well, the kind of art I do is like very, I would say, sort of like psychological portraits, like Lucian Freud. I really like Alice Neal.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of art that I make. I would say my stuff is most similar to theirs. But then I love everything. I mean, I'm just super interested in anything visual art. I'm very open. I am always trying to discover new things, and I like a lot of symbolic work.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's LA. There's got to be a hell of an art scene there too. But is there like crossover between the art and music scene there?
It's a good question. Long ago I had like this fantasy about having a art show for musicians, about like curating that. And I talked to my friend George. He's in that band. He's not in that band. He is that band. Twin Shadow. It's his project.
Okay.
He's another musician who's a great visual artist, and he really liked that idea. I just never got around to doing it.
That's actually a really awesome idea. Can I totally steal that?
You can totally steal it. I mean, I need to make it happen at some point, and I will, because I feel like I know all the secret musicians who are hiding their art skills.
Yeah.
And I think they want to come out. Like, yeah, it's very interesting. But I haven't seen a huge scene for it here, and LA's art scene hasn't inspired me as much. I lived in New York for 8 years or 7 years. So, and New York's art scene is obviously phenomenal. LA's a bit more
Is LA a little more pretentious, or?
I would say less pretentious and just, more aesthetic and less compared to New York. I think New York's, there's a lot more deeper intention behind each piece and critical thought. I'm not going to say, it's a huge generalization to say all LA artists don't have critical thought, but in general, it leans more aesthetic than the other direction.
Yeah. We actually just interviewed a musician artist out of New York, and he did a show of his portraits, excuse me. And his band played at the opening. So kind of like,
how cool.
Yeah. So it's like, that's kind of a really cool idea.
I love that. Yeah. That's the more that, more ways to like combine everything, the better.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I think we are finding in Inebri-art, because it started off just, a bunch of us hanging out, drinking and drawing. But,
cool.
We've really been kind of combining as much as we can. So we've done pop-up art shows at breweries, and like that, we had a musician, but that was kind of like an afterthought. I'd like to be more intentional about that now, but no, it's an interesting idea, because the one premise behind this whole podcast is creative people are pretty all cut from the same cloth, no matter what they're doing. And so we've been able to kind of, it's fun to like hang out and talk with people, and you're a country apart and you're like, oh yeah, we're same wavelength, totally.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree that there's something for everyone who's tapped in. I mean, my opinion is that everyone is an artist. It's just the degree to which you're tapped into it, or tapped into what your art form is.
Yeah, and it's how much time did you spend practicing? Because people be like, oh, I can't draw like that. I'm like, well, no, you didn't spend 40 years practicing.
Yeah, I know. My friend is an classically trained opera singer, and same thing. He's like, everyone's a singer.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool to think that
if you get everyone stuck in traffic in their car, everyone's a singer.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, so I hate when people use the term talent, because I'm like, I feel like it takes away from all the hard work that people put into their craft.
Yep, for sure. I can totally see that.
Have you been drawing or painting or whatever medium you work in during quarantine?
Yeah, that was actually coming out a lot more than usual in quarantine. I think the internalness of it was like, I was drawing a lot at the beginning of quarantine. I've slowed down, but just some of this conversation and some other things that have happened in the last like 24 hours makes me feel like it's going to start popping up again. It's going to have my second wave.
Are we getting the ball rolling?
I think the ball might be rolling in the visual department.
Nice. All right. I won't mention the flow state.
Okay. Ball rolling is better. Don't say it.
That's awesome. So we're kind of already at the end of the show. Where can people go to see your work, or hear your work, I should say?
You can go to Spotify or Bandcamp or iTunes. It's there under Doe Paoro, which is Doepaoro, 2 words. So,
which I won't say again because I will mispronounce it for certain.
That's the website. That's just www.doepaoro.com.
Nice, and hopefully you guys will be performing relatively soon. I mean,
yeah, we'll see. I mean, we'll definitely be performing again.
Yeah, find a campground and spread out some picnic tables. And
I mean, to me that sounds amazing. I love performing outdoors anyways. It's where I'm at my happiest. So if music goes that way, it's no problem for me.
Yeah, it's really funny because that band I was mentioning that I've really been listening to a lot of, they are performing in Marshfield, which is right up the road from me, and so they're doing the same thing. You buy a table's worth of seats, and they sold out in 15 seconds, 2 shows.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm like, damn it. So this is kind of and I hate to say, because Jeff is who I'm seeing tonight is also a friend of mine, but it's like, I hate to say he's the runner-up, but he's the runner-up because I could get tickets to this.
The campground performance is a very cool idea. I love that.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I'll have to see if there's a campground around here that we can organize something at.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I mean, one of my favorite festivals I've ever played at is Osheaga up in Montreal, and the reason I like it is because it's this outdoor stage, and you're like, the one I played at was among all these giant trees, and yeah, it felt good. It felt good to be out of there instead of like a beer stained bar.
Hey, there's something to be said about beer stained bars. I like those.
I love those too, but I love the trees more.
Yeah. So today's is going to be more of a parking lot than anything else, but yeah.
Enjoy it. You'll have to let me know how it goes.
Yeah, I'll let you know. I'm sure. I mean, Jeff's he's one of the most fun performers I know. He's got a great singing voice. He's a good musician, but he's really not. He doesn't take himself seriously at all. So he's just very entertaining, fun person. So that'll be.
It's a good quality in musicians because I think a lot of us take ourselves way too seriously.
Oh, you just made me think of. I went and saw the Decemberists. I think it was like 3 years ago, and I don't know why. I kind of always thought I don't know them, but they kind of I don't know, they seemed kind of pretentious. I like them, but if I
Sure.
could see a band being pretentious, it was them. And the lead singer was so funny. Like, they do kind of that crowd interaction, and he's like, okay, the left side, the right side, and he's like, all the guys in the audience, all the girls in the audience, and he's like, all the guys as girls. So they put on a hell of a show.
Yeah, I think that's also a thing, is like sometimes the saddest music is the funniest. Like some of the musicians I know who make the saddest, most like achy music are full clowns.
So who are the ones that are the most pretentious, obnoxious, don't want to be around? Are those the ones that make poppy music?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
like,
I'm not asking you to name names.
I'm not going to name names, but I'm like, yeah, probably.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Most self-important. I don't know. Yeah, but definitely the people you think are the saddest are usually hilarious.
Yeah. It's like that old trope of the clown cries on side or whatever. So
Yeah.
But
Truly.
so thanks again for joining us, and
Andy.
thank you for our listeners for listening.
Great talking to you. Enjoy the show tonight.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. You can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or on Instagram at Inebri-art6. You can email us at Inebri-art@yahoo.com. And make sure you listen to the other podcasts on the Inebri-art Podcast Network, including Bar Talk, Old Colony Cast, Retro Redoctopus, America's Hometown Horror Podcast, and our newest one, Theme Park Legends, a podcast about working at theme parks. What else? And we'll catch you again next time.